Ta-da! Hey, Boker, is it still morning? But no, Hatzalaim Tovim. Hello. This is Pastor Jim here with Wild Branch Ministry. I'm interviewing my buddy Jack Dody. Jack and I met a couple years ago, and he's had some amazing things happen in his life. Originally, Jake and I interviewed Jack. Was it 2 years ago now, or just a year? I think.
I don't know.
It was a little while back,
It was a
but
while. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
a lot of things have changed, and Jack has an amazing ministry, and so I'll just kind of let Jack explain an overview of what you guys do. The name of your ministry is Abundaculture, right?
Abundaculture.
Right.
Right. Because we believe that God wants us to live abundantly. This is real different than name it and claim it. The reason He wants us to live abundantly is so that we can share the abundance with others.
Right.
That's kind of an important part of it.
Yeah.
God has designed a world that really works. And unfortunately, because of poor stewardship, the world's kind of in a mess now. 20 years ago, my wife and I built an off-grid place 50 miles east of Colorado Springs. And that's where I live now. And it's been off-grid all those years, just humming along. We have electricity, we have clean water, we grow a little bit of food, we have good sanitation, and it just works marvelously. And most of the designs really just come out of the basic tenets of the scriptures. The first couple, like 22 pages, are all about the biblical foundation.
Right.
And we put everything on the internet at no charge. So there's a training manual called Abundaculture. If you just put in abundaculture.org, that'll take you right to our website. And right on the website, it says, hey, get your free download. It's truly free. The people that we served in the very beginning were the poorest of the poor around the world. I traveled all over the third world to try to understand what we could do to alleviate poverty. And so we made everything free. And now we have also a YouTube channel.
Right.
And there are about 30 presentations on that, and that also all free. So our interest is in sharing these ideas because we've seen what a difference, for instance, my wife and I, what it did for us financially, as a couple, for our marriage, and all of it was just a wonderful improvement. And so we wanted to share this with other people. And basically what Abundaculture is we talk about 5 areas. I know right now, because of COVID and all the stuff that our country's going through right now, there are a lot of people that are saying, man, I need to somehow prepare myself for what's coming. And I agree. I feel a real sense of urgency, to provide training and help people learn as much as they can. So for a lot of folks, when they start thinking like that, man, I need to do something, it's really overwhelming. You're really kind of taking your life and throwing it up in the air and seeing what happens.
Right.
So, but we've done it. We don't tell people to try anything that we didn't do.
Right.
Now, my wife passed away in July of this year, and we agreed that my job was going to be to finish what we started. And that is, training other people and sharing these ideas. So I'm back out in Rush, and we're taking care of business. We can show you, if you could divide this whole challenge of living off the grid into 5 simple steps. Well, now you've kind of got a structure. You've got a starting point.
Right.
And that's what we did.
Right.
So the first thing is shelter, simple shelter, inexpensive shelter. If it's $300,000, that's not going to help you get away from the grid very fast, because you're going to be tied to the bank and everybody else. So we pretty much built without a mortgage. And so that means it's going to be simple, and it's going to be small to start with. You can always, add more as God provides what you need.
Right. So it could be very modular.
Very modular.
If it's a young couple with no kids, they live in a smaller space, but if they have 2 or 3 children, you could modularly attach additional.
Right. And Jim, that's the way that things were always done in America until right after the Second World War.
Right.
That's when they started having mortgages
Right.
for houses. Prior to that, out on the farm, you had a little old house, just like you said. They started out, with no kids, and as time went by and they'd have a good season, they'd add, hey, we made a really great crop this year. They'd add another room because they knew there's going to be a kid coming down the line. So that's why you look at those old country houses there, they kind of look like they're scattered all over the place because they are. They just kind of grew organically. And so it's a really good way to do it. Start out small and you can always add as God provides. So shelter is the first thing. Second thing is energy. Now, this is the thing that most people are really interested in. I have trained a lot of people to do solar. Solar systems, not these huge monstrous, $30,000 systems. We keep them pretty small. And then if you need to add more, you just build another system. And that's the way most people who live with solar actually do it. Again, because of the expense. Solar is cheaper today than it has ever been. Man,
the quality of the panels has skyrocketed, and then the cost has dropped exponentially.
It's not just the panels that it's all the control equipment too. It's rock solid. I haven't had trouble for 20 years.
Wow.
And that's 24/7 every day. All my neighbors, go through when the wind blows, their electricity goes off.
Power lines.
We've never been without electricity in 20 years. It's quite amazing.
So you use how many panels on average? Would you say 100
watt
panels?
I start out with what we call a kilowatt, which is 1,000 watts of panels. Start there. That's a pretty workable system. It's pretty hard to kill yourself if you're just a little bit careful working with that kind of electricity.
There's direct current. It's not quite
direct current. I start out with a direct current, and then we can always add inverters and make it into 110. But keep it, again, the whole idea is you got to make this simple. If you're just seeing this and thinking of this today, you're behind the 8 ball. You're going to need to get moving. And all of this is in the training manual, which is free. You can look at all these ideas. Second thing, so we're on the third thing. We have shelter, real simple shelter. Energy, and most of that solar and wood power. And wood, I can't make propane. But I can usually find an old dead tree. And
I heard you make a lot of methane.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no problem. So the next thing is water. We have rainwater catchment. We don't have a well. We've never had a well. The water that hits my roof, it's about my footprint of the house, I think, is about 1,800 square feet. And
which is fairly large.
It's smaller than most houses, but my walls are 5 feet thick. So
5 feet?
5 feet thick. They're made with weed bales.
Wow.
So it's super insulated. I would never do it that way again. I found easier ways to do it.
Sure.
But the point being, on that 1,800 square feet, when 1 inch of rain hits that, I get about 1,000 gallons of water.
Wow.
And then I have cisterns, and we have to be able to live in where I live. A good year is 9 inches. 9 inches of precipitation. So we use every drop of water at least twice, some of it 3 times. We use it for, say, bathing. That's use 1, and then it goes to the garden. We use a special soap so that we can use that water and put it right on the garden. And then we water trees with it and so forth. So we get double use out of our water. So water's the next key thing. Then food. We have a little greenhouse. Colorado, at 6,000 feet where we're at, a greenhouse is really a big help. And we work real hard on that. We can produce a tremendous amount of food in a relatively small space. We've developed these SIP planters. It's not my idea. It's a sub-irrigated planter. You can see 100 different models of them on YouTube. But we worked on one, and by golly, it saves 50 to 80% on water.
Wow.
The yields are fantastic. And it just works extremely well. As far as food goes, we want to have people who, get as much food as possible with as little work as possible. You want to get some real food. So the next thing is, let's see, we go through that. Food, water,
Sanitation.
We use composting toilets.
Mhm.
Actually, the sanitation portion of it is the part that kind of separates the men from the girls. A lot of people say, man, I ain't going to be doing that. But it is actually the center of how everything works on our homestead, because by using the composting toilet and composting all that waste, we plant all of our food in 100% compost. Now the key is, whoa, you're gonna make yourself sick. Never made anybody sick. So the key though is that it takes a whole, the time we put it on fire to the time it gets used is a whole year. You can't cut corners on that. And all of this is in the manual. It explains exactly how it works. But all of the microbes that might be harmful are killed in that process, in that composting process.
I see. So by waiting for a year, it processes out the harmful microbes, and only the beneficial ones remain for the nutrients of the plants and the food that you're going to grow.
So the point of telling this whole story was that, look, if you're going to take on a big task like, providing for yourself, maybe even just having a bug out place in the country.
Right.
You need a place to start. And it's so overwhelming. I see people just kind of flailing around, doing a little of this and a little of that. What we offer is a structure.
Mm-hmm.
Do these things.
Right.
And
it's a complete integrated system. One feeds into the other, so that however you adapt your system to their particular wants or needs, it all integrates back into itself.
Yeah, it's a circle.
Right.
It's almost like God made things to work that way.
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't kid you.
The circle.
We just took a really hard look at the whole, how things work, and we could see that the way that we were doing it sometimes wasn't working so well. Mm-hmm. For instance, the whole food deal.
Right.
We have wonderful food in the country, and I admire the farmers, what they've done. They've not only fed the people in this country, they've fed most of the whole world.
Right, yeah.
And it's quite a thing that they've done. But the problem is, it's such a complicated system that if any little thing goes wrong, like we have a snowstorm, in 2 days, we haven't got anything on the shelves in Walmart.
Right.
And with what we're seeing going on now with the trucker strike, mm-hmm. and all these problems,
supply chain backup, yeah. And let alone if there's any more problems in Asia, where most of our manufacturing is done in the world. 90% of all of our medications are made in Asia, right? China or Taiwan.
And one of the things about homesteading is it's the most, if you're reasonable, it's one of the healthiest ways in the world to live. This is our temple.
Right.
God tells us, and sitting in front of a computer, 10 hours a day is probably not the most healthy thing to do.
True.
But out on the homestead, you're taking care of the chickens, you're cutting firewood, you're always building something, you're keeping things operational. I don't pay a gem.
Right. Because you don't need to. Tote that barge,
plenty of work.
Right.
Plenty of work. So, but we've tried to make it simple too. We're not seeing real great benefits in just working people into the ground.
Right.
You want to have time for your kids. One of the reasons that I really wanted to have a homestead was, it's a little late in my case, but I knew that sending the kids to school was not working.
Right.
And I encourage people, just get away from the public school system. Right. It's not working.
Right. There are aspects of it, especially in certain parts of the country, where it's a train wreck.
Yeah. And so by the way that God designed the family, that as parents, we were the ones who were supposed to be spending time with our kids and teaching them how to do it. Well, the homestead's a natural learning ground.
Right.
You got the kids right there. Hey, today, Junior, we're going to dig this hole and we're going to plant this tree.
Right.
And here's how we do it.
Right. Which is how my great-grandparents lived at the turn of the century.
My grandparents really are the ones that inspired the whole Abundaculture idea. I was a young guy. I got married young, Then I had a couple of kids right away. And so now I'm saying, hey, man, I can't figure out how to make enough money to live in this system.
Right.
By having a standard house and a car and all these different things, I never could make it work.
Right.
I was always on the edge of financial disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, something's wrong with this. My grandparents, they didn't have any money, but they had clean water. They had, a nice little place to live, So good shelter. They took care of themselves. They had good food. And I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually used their life as a model.
Right.
So that's kind of, a homestead is just basically a multifunctional,
Right.
system where you're taking care of your needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we got there.
Wow, that's fantastic.
But something new has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking care of my wife for a couple of years, and during that time, I'm still doing my ministry, which is sharing Abundaculture with folks. But the letters started to change. Really, really interesting.
Right.
How it worked. I wrote a little brief thing that I put on the internet on my website about resilient Christian communities, RCCs I call them. Just what is it? I think the natives are restless.
Yeah, that's my crazy dog. I locked him out on the dog door, and now he's like, "Let me in, please. I love you."
So I wrote just like one page about resilient Christian communities, and the reason I did that is that seven years ago, my wife had this idea that we needed to be in a house church. We belong to a good local church,
Right.
large church. I still love that church, and I go there too. But she said, there's something missing, and she was right. We had felt like we were on a plateau. We had gotten to a certain place in our Christian walk, and we just felt like we were just kind of stuck.
Right.
We're not. There was more. We knew
Sure.
there was more, but we weren't able to enjoy more.
Mm-hmm.
Something was wrong. So she started studying this, and
Let me put him in my office real quick. You keep talking. I'll put him in the office.
So, yeah, the dog is making lots of noise. So we started doing some research, and we came up with this Luke 10. If you look it up on the internet, it's lk10.com, luke10.com. And that passage is about when Jesus was sending out disciples and disciple makers. And it's a very simple structure for how you can do house church. And we were so blown away by the difference it made in our lives and in the lives of the other church members. We still attend that church 7 years later. And what happens is you develop an intimacy with God first and with the other members of the church. It's just amazing, and it's so simple. So about 2 years ago, everybody who wrote me a letter, and I get letters from all over the world because of the internet.
Right.
All this stuff is available everywhere.
And you've been on the internet for quite a long time.
I've been on for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
You're a pioneer, basically, in this area. Yeah.
I kind of am. There weren't too many nuts running around. But what happens is that we just found that this thing really, really worked. And then with COVID, people were feeling so isolated.
Yeah.
They realized, man, I need people. A lot of the churches, shut down, and you couldn't get together, and people just were longing for that God thing.
Mm-hmm.
He made us so that we need to get together, and that's why the scriptures tell us that we shouldn't forsake the gathering. In other words, you get together with other believers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with our little house church, we just never stopped.
Right.
We just said, hey, something's going to get us. Oh, now we're all old people, so we figured something's going to get us. What the heck? We're going to enjoy each other. We're going to give each other a hug on the neck at least once a week when we get together. Right. And so I found that system is so simple to teach and so easy to share with folks that we made that a part of all our training. Mm-hmm. Is the Luke 10. And again, that's lk10.com.
Right, lk10.com.
Yeah, and they have all their literature available, and you can, see and give it a try.
Right.
And so now we're helping people develop communities at my little homestead. Mm-hmm. Now I have my partner in ministry, Carlos, who took care of my place while I was in town taking care of my wife for 2 years.
Right.
He lives there in the bunkhouse, and he is my main man, my right arm.
Yeah.
And then I have a young couple, and just almost 30, who came because they wanted to learn to live off the grid. They just met Jesus about 5 or 6 months, and we were Zooming together because they had such great questions. And started Zooming, and so after my wife passed away, I said, "Well, why don't you guys come out and you can live on the place? I have some tiny houses out there."
Right.
So they live in the tiny house, and we do church together, and we just live.
Right.
And then I have another young couple, a fellow who does all my YouTube presentations, just got married. He's 20 something, and he's bringing his young wife, and they're going to spend a year out there with us. So we have a small community. Now, these communities are all small. I suggest that 12 is about max.
Right.
And I mean, you can have 2 people that have a community.
Right.
We found that, up to 12 works pretty well. And so we are actually living in community and learning now, because it's a different kind of challenge.
Sure.
But we're really enjoying it, and God's really been gracious to us.
Because when you study interpersonal communications, you get above 12, the number of people that relationships have to occur begins to exponentially increase past 12. But at 12, you're limited to those 12 people that interact with each other in different levels.
We found this out just by trial and error.
Sure.
But there's something to what you just said, man.
Yeah.
It just seemed that we could work. It worked that way.
Right.
And so we kind of made a point. And there's something about, Jesus just working with 12.
I thought that number was familiar.
Yeah, it's kind of like, why would he only work with 12? Well, because people are people.
Right.
And those interpersonal, things, characteristics that we have make it difficult to work with more people.
Right.
So what our goal is now, Jim,
Mm-hmm.
again, we're still nonprofit. And boy, when I say nonprofit, I ain't kidding.
No profit. Yeah.
No profit.
Right.
But we do charge for people to come. When they come, and we provide hands-on training in things like how do you catch rainwater? How do you purify rainwater? How do you build a simple solar system?
Sure.
How do you, what are the basics of good gardening?
Right.
These are real basic, and it's all on you can see it, all the offerings there on the website.
Right.
And so for that, we charge $100 a day.
Per person.
Per person.
Right.
But a lot of times they just spend 1 week. That's kind of typical. But then other people stay for a year. Well, pretty quick. They're not paying $100 a day.
Right.
What happens is they end up doing work on the place, and we just kind of call it a wash.
Right.
As long as it's going well and they're learning and they're happy and we're happy, they stay.
Right.
For a while.
Right.
And I've had several folks do that.
Mm.
And our goal is to train folks, and Jesus is always first in all of this stuff.
Right.
He's
that Jewish rabbi, right? Yeah.
What's that?
Jesus, he's that Jewish rabbi.
Yeah, that Jewish kid. But we're always saying, because it's Jesus who created everything. And he gives us a book that kind of explains how we can make it work together.
Right.
And so if we're not pointing to Jesus, then we're not really helping people. When I traveled overseas, I could go in there and build a house for people. That's no big deal. But if in the process they didn't get to know Jesus, what I saw was that they would just end up right back where they were very quickly.
Right.
It's that change in your life that knowing Christ makes.
Right.
That makes life work.
Exactly.
And so that's our first. We're always there first. But what we're trying to do now, and we feel some sense of urgency, Jim, because there's just it seems like the world is just really kind of disintegrating before our eyes, and people are going to need a safe place to be.
Right.
And I don't think that the infrastructure, water, sewage, electricity, gas, I think all those things are going to struggle.
Right.
And so it makes sense to be able to do those things on your own as much as is possible.
Right.
And also we need to start building these communities. And a community is nothing more than intimate relationships with other people.
Right.
That's all we're talking about. When we say community, it's not like, this big huge thing where we're going to have 150,000 people.
Right.
It's community, when we're talking about it, is intimate relationships between human beings.
Right.
You actually share life together.
Yes.
And it's centered on your relationship with Jesus.
Right.
He's the one who makes a community work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that transformation of the Holy Spirit in our hearts that causes the knowledge to move about 18 inches down to our heart.
Yeah.
And then we live out the gospel in our everyday
And
life.
it takes living that out, because if you're going to live close to people, like, we have 35 acres and we have now 5 people right now, or what, 4 people. 4 people right now, and then 2 more coming, so we'll have 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not walking with Jesus, man, you'll be just eating each other.
Right.
I mean, it's difficult, and even when you're trying to follow Jesus, there are times when you get sideways. It's not easy,
Right.
But it's doable when you give it to Jesus.
Right.
When the Holy Spirit's kind of running this show, and that's a big aspect of the Luke 10 church program too.
Right.
Jesus, the Holy Spirit, is the one who runs the church.
Right.
There's no, I'm not the dictator over this deal.
Right.
It's not the Jack show.
Right.
It's this is all about Jesus, and we're trying to learn how to follow him better.
Right.
And love on each other in the process.
Right.
And so that's what we're really focusing on now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to share with your listeners is that our new approach is to say, come and see.
Yeah.
Come on out and see it. We've always had lots of folks, drop by, and they would see us on the internet. And then I have a lot of missionaries from all over the world. And when they're on furlough, they'd come and see. And I trained a lot of missionaries who were going all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we're really focusing on this saying, come and see if this might be an option for you.
Right.
A way that, you could have a better walk with your kids,
mm-hmm.
A better relationship with your wife, a sense of community, so you don't feel alone when everything's falling apart around you.
Right.
And at the same time, you can do community in the heart of the, an urban area.
Sure.
A lot of people do.
Right.
But I personally believe that being off grid at this point in time makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so we can show you how to do that. That's kind of a special thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the house church can be done anywhere.
Sure.
And I encourage people to develop those relationships. But we teach people how to live off the grid.
Right.
And so if you want to do that, come and see if it's a fit for you. And then we can talk about, we teach from June 1 to October 31st.
Okay.
And that's just because of the weather.
Right.
Where I live, it can get a little dicey out there. So June 1, and we're 50 miles from Colorado Springs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of nice to come here.
Yeah.
If you live in Texas, it's cool here. It's cool here. And so you can come spend a little time, see the mountains, and have fun, and see if this is something that might work for you.
Right. And it's basically a model community on how to build a similar model virtually anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, and our purpose there, you talk about being a model. We did it, originally we were teaching the missionaries, and that was our main focus. And everything we did had to work.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to some really hard places. It wasn't an experimental thing. Hey, maybe this will work. Why don't you try this?
Right.
It wasn't that way. My wife and I lived it every single day. So if we said to a guy who was going over to Chad, hey, this will work, we knew it would work.
Right.
If you do it the way we suggest you do it, it will work. And so, again, sense of urgency. We don't have a whole lot of time to reinvent the wheel here.
Mm-hmm.
We do have something that works. If it's something that is also pleasing to you, then we'd love to share it.
Right.
At this point, we've been nonprofit for so long, we're not worried about making a profit. And but we do really want to encourage people to think about the things that we're saying here. Because I don't know what happens next.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be good.
No, there's going to be challenges. And what you've designed, what the Lord's given you in this process, is helps people prepare for any eventuality, that you would be able to survive, whether the power goes off for a day or a month or a year. You don't care. You have your own power.
That's right.
If the grocery store, because of weather or the supply chain problems, get worse with China and Taiwan and the Far East, and the grocery stores are empty or half empty or totally empty for weeks at a time, you don't care. You're already growing most of your food anyway.
Well, I'm not growing most of it, but I'm also a prepper.
Right. So you've made preparations for
Now,
it.
yeah. So
period of,
we try to get seeds and have some basic foodstuffs so that we can keep going through those ups and downs of the marketplace.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so that's another thing that we encourage people, is we teach prepping, and it's real basic.
Right.
We're low budget preppers.
Right.
We don't buy the 25-year stuff.
Right. Right.
So
keep it simple. Right.
Keep it as simple as we can. I get most of my stuff at Walmart.
Right.
Right. When there happens to be there.
So I think from what I see from the challenge of where like my wife and I are at in our lives, to transition to that lifestyle, there has to be sort of like an intermediary, I think, for us. But like you were saying, if you're able to get a tiny house built in a rural area that is basically a vacation home for you, and you already have it all built, supplied, and ready and functioning on its own, through whatever eventuality, we can be there within an hour or two. Yeah. And be able to make that already a home that we already are familiar with.
Well, a lot of people that I've helped are doing it in, used RVs.
Sure.
A travel trailer or even a motorhome.
Right. Right.
And we've helped people, outfit those so they can do many of the same things that our place does. They can filter their water, put them on solar, so the solar operates the RV, and so that's another way. And a lot of people are taking that route because it is a good intermediate.
Right, and it allows you to attain a level of mobility that is not quite as easy with the tiny house you built because it's rather heavy.
Yeah.
So we have a motorhome. My birth father, before he passed away, I met him, and they prayed about it. He said, Jimmy, he said, your mom and I, my stepmother, Shawnee, feel that God wants us to give this to you because you and Debbie are going to be using it for ministry in the future. And so we've done some trips, but we know what we're called to do with the Wild Branch Ministry is to eventually travel to communities of believers, building community centers, which is almost identical to what you're describing, building community, to go to these communities to encourage the believers, to pray for people, to teach God's word, and to build culture that reinforces all of these values that God's given us, for 7,000 years of human history, or 6,000.
And we're looking to train people so they can do just that. Once a person like this young couple that's there, I don't know how long they're going to stay.
Sure.
They're enjoying themselves right now. We've got plenty of work to do, and we're having a great time. But the idea always is to train them so that they can train others.
Right.
Just that basic discipleship model.
Exactly.
And so
to raise up leadership immediately. They know when they're starting from the very beginning, they're believers for just a few months, but they already know your long-term goal is to train them to lead leaders and train other leaders.
And be able to take this to other places. My dream would be to have every couple of 100 miles in the U.S., there'd be a little community somewhere. So, if a person is traveling across the country and he got in trouble, there'd be a safe place where he could go.
Right. Hallelujah.
And so that's, and there are a lot of people my age, who have amassed, like I had this place, it's 35 acres. I got a house on it and everything's paid for. And, so there are a lot of people like that call me and they say, we'd really like to have a ministry here. We'd like to do this. And so we're there to help people like that.
Facilitate.
Because most young people don't have the wherewithal financially to be able to do this. I don't care how simple you make it; it takes some money.
Right.
You've got to really watch your dollars. And so this is a place where the older generation, my generation, the older generation can continue to pour into the younger generation,
right,
and help them, and all the things that we've learned the hard way, and I can tell that you've learned a lot of things the hard way because you're pretty beat up. So all those things, God doesn't waste time.
Right.
He's put us through the mill so that we can help a young person.
Right. Perhaps for such a time as this.
Exactly.
The Lord has raised you up and brought us together to build these communities through a very casual, non-super focused, but yet to say, here's how we can do it, folks. Here's how we can build the body of Christ to survive any eventuality that will come our way. Yeah. What happens if our supply chain gets severely interrupted? Mm-hmm. What if you're already ready? Yeah. And you don't care?
That would be really helpful.
Right, right. Yeah. And if we already got the process going, we're training other people already to be ready. Mm-hmm. And so your property sits 35 acres.
Yeah.
And
in Colorado, the law says you got to have at least 35. They say 40, but some of them are 35.
Right.
And you can build a place on that. If you wanted to put more people than that on there legally,
right,
then you have to build roads and septic systems and water systems and everything.
Right.
So basically, it means that most people are going to live on 40 acres.
Sure, sure.
And you get again, our deal is to work with people who don't have much money.
Right, right.
So they're not going to be creating a subdivision.
Of course, right. And that's not the point, is to build 50 tiny houses on your 40 acres, is to create more smaller.
First of all, my neighbors would come.
Yeah,
that would not be good.
Right, right.
They would not be happy.
Right, there's some challenges there.
So keeping things, again, there's a reason to keep things small.
Right, lots of important reasons.
And the reason that I live so far out is that I'm not as hampered by all the rules and regulations that go with living
in the city,
more populated area.
Right.
And it makes it really difficult to try to do something like this in town. So many people have asked me, can I just keep my house now and retrofit it, put some solar in and this and that? Well, yeah, you could. It would be very difficult to have it function like my place functions. It just still costs you a lot of money to live in town.
Right, right, right. And the idea is to create a whole different culture, as opposed to one that we already know has challenges that are difficult to overcome. So if people want to get a hold of you, they call you, they email you, they look.
The best way is email.
Okay.
And it's just jack@abundaculture.org.
Okay. Easy.
Not .com, .org.
Org.
Yeah. And just drop me a line, and then if you look on the training manual, this is free. First thing on the docket there when you get on my website. Then you download that training manual, take a look at it, and write down your questions and give me a call.
Right.
I spend a lot of my time on the phone.
Right, right.
Just helping people, answering their questions. Well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so I spend a lot of time like that, and that's part of our ministry,
right?
To help people. And then if you're taking a trip, and you're going to get close to Colorado, let me know so I can write it on the calendar, and come by and just see.
Right. Yeah. It looks like. Just seeing it in operation. I see people who, because I've talked to people who said, yeah, we'd love to do the RV lifestyle because either we're retired now or we have no children at home. We don't need a 3,000 square foot home. There's the two of us, etc. But there's that transition. It's a huge shift in our paradigm, and to get used to that for some people is very, very difficult living.
Well, what I found is that it's very hard for them to imagine what it would be like to live off the grid. What does that really look like? A composting toilet. Come on.
Right.
What is that? Can you really do this? I mean, is this going to be a dump?
Right.
You knew my wife was a opera singer from LA, so she was no hippie chick. And dude, this place was not going to look like some hippie hovel from day one. And she had a condo, and she sold the condo, and that's how we had the money, the cash, to actually build this place. So it was her place. So trust me, buddy, it doesn't look like a hippie hovel.
It's a classy place.
Yeah. It's a nice place. It's not fancy, but it's very comfortable.
No crystal chandeliers, but
actually, we do have.
Oh, you do have crystal chandeliers.
Yes, because that's something she wanted. It's a small one, and yes, we do have that. So yeah, a lot of people will come to the door and they'll say, to come to visit and see it, and they'll walk in and they'll say, "Wow, this isn't nearly as crappy as we thought it was going to be." Well, thank you very much, and welcome to my home.
That's right.
Yeah, and seriously, I've had that
I can
more
imagine.
than once,
I can imagine.
because the idea here is not to live in sackcloth and ashes.
Right.
I see no glory in being poor.
Right.
Unless God calls you to it, that's a different matter. But for the most part, I am against poverty.
Right. Right. It may be modest, but very comfortable.
Well, yeah. I mean, God didn't design this world for, to look like a blue tent place down in LA.
Right.
That is not his plan.
Right. Right.
He designed it so that we could enjoy life, and so that life could be comfortable and beautiful, and that we would enjoy it, and it would honor him.
Right.
When somebody drives by my place, I mean, it's very modest, but I want people, when they drive by, not to say, "Oh my heavens, look at that."
Right.
Dump.
Right.
No, I want people to look by and say, "Hey, that's pretty nice."
Yeah.
That honors God. God is a God of order, and symmetry and beauty.
Right.
And he expects that of the people who are his servants.
Right. Amen. Yeah.
So I want it to be a nice place, not just, it's not like living as a pioneer in a pup tent. That is not what we're after.
Right.
Certain degree of comfort. Electricity is really wonderful.
Sure.
The solar really helps.
Right. And many appliances today you can get that run off of 12 volts. You don't have to go. You can do an inverter, relatively inexpensive as well.
And we have Wi-Fi. I have at first it was on a line with the local telephone company, but it got overwhelmed and they quit doing that. So now I have a satellite, and it's not great. I can't. It's too slow to stream.
Right.
But I can do almost everything I need to do on. I can get all my Wi-Fi stuff.
Right.
I can do research and that kind of thing, which is what I use it for.
Right.
But we do have all those amenities. The one wire that runs onto our property is from the telephone company.
Right.
I do have a landline because the phone service is terrible out there.
Right.
And so I need to be able to talk to people that, like I say, that's how I spend a lot of my time.
Well, and the rapid, love it or hate it, the rapid advances that Elon Musk is making with Starlink, you can have high-speed Wi-Fi and cell phone service literally anywhere on the planet. It's pricey, but compared to no communication, that's a cheap cost.
Yeah, well, I have, I can watch television if there's ever anything on.
Right.
I wanted to see.
Worth watching, yeah.
But I watch a lot of YouTube stuff.
Sure.
And I can do that with my iPad.
Which everybody from the age of 40 under hardly watches regular television anymore anyway. My grandson, he doesn't watch any TV at all.
It's pitiful.
It's all on YouTube. Well, but he watches specific things and he learns. He loves to watch animal shows and learning certain things about countries. And so his knowledge is actually very, very deep in certain areas because he just can chase any interest that he has.
Yeah, that's an exciting thing. And that may not be around that long.
Sure.
So, one of the things I suggest to people that are prepping is you need a paper copy too.
Right.
Yeah, it's great to have digital copies. It's great to have the iPad. It's great to be able to look up information on your phone.
Right.
That may not be available. So one of the things I have is the library that I used to create the training manual. I saved all that, and now I have the physical library.
A hard copy of everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So I can, when people have questions and they call me and they say, "Hey, what about this problem?" I have a notebook there, and I grab it, and I pretty much can find just about anything in this form. Troubleshoot it for them.
That's fantastic.
One thing I'd like to just put in the listener's ear, just as a way to wrap things up. Maybe it's time that we pull away from the society that we see crumbling. With some of the perversion and the just insane stuff that I see going on. I wonder, and I know the argument, we're supposed to be salt and light. And I agree with that. We are to be salt and light. But there are also times in biblical history where God says, "Come out."
Right. Come out from the
And I'm thinking maybe it's time to come out.
Lot was a great example. He had to leave Sodom and Gomorrah.
And I tell you, Sodom and Gomorrah got nothing on America right now.
Right. We're pretty close to the same.
It's very scary.
Volatile world.
Yeah. So I just like to have our listeners think about that.
Sure.
I don't know the answer,
Right.
but I know for me, being out and away, and I
Right.
have neighbors, within the closest neighbor I have is a quarter of a mile. So there are people around,
Right.
but I just don't have to deal with them if I don't want to.
Right. You don't live in absolute desolation, but yeah, there are neighbors nearby, and to drive into town is a
And
little
again,
bit of
that's part of our bigger community.
Right.
We need to be able to trade. Say, if I've got a friend who's butchering a cow, hey, I support him by paying for some of that meat,
Right.
and I need to have that meat,
Right.
and caring for each other medically, for instance.
Right.
There's just a number of things. Building the skills that we have. People are always asking us, "Well, will you come over and help us build this or help us design this?"
Right.
And so we stay very busy doing that sort of thing.
Right. That's fantastic.
And that's the community, the little bit larger community than our 12.
Right. Yeah. And that allows a greater influence on the culture around you and the people around you.
And it's so important with what's happening. If our, all of these delivery systems collapse, and we've seen them, they're pretty precarious right now, then you're going to have to depend on those neighbors who may be a couple of miles away.
Right.
You're going to need them, and they're going to need you.
Right. Yeah. And that's brilliant. And that's, that's where the Holy Spirit leads us and guides us in all the things that we're doing. If whether you're dipping your toe in the water just now or you're ready to make the leap, Jack is literally a human library of information. Just don't push his button too hard. Yeah. He hates it when you do that. But yeah, so reach out to Jack, call him and look him up online. Download, though it's free, you would not complain if someone donated financially to what you're doing.
I wouldn't be mad at all.
Right, you wouldn't be offended if somebody said, "Jack, here's $150."
There are places on the website to say, if you'd like to
donate. Right.
We are. I work for a 501c3, Equip Ministries. I'm under their umbrella, and they help me to keep straight. And So
if you're inspired, maybe you're not ready to make the leap, but if you're inspired, you want to support what Jack is doing for young people, 30 years and under, who are bringing them out, training them how to do this. Donate some money. Come in and help him.
Think about it for your kids.
Right, for your own children or your grandchildren.
You're saying, "Man, I don't want to send him to college. I mean, he's ready to go to college, but man, this college system right now is a mess.
And it's ridiculously expensive."
So I get a lot of those kids. A lot of times they've been homeschooled,
right?
And they might have tried college a little bit, and it wasn't a good fit for them. And this one kid, sharp boy, he was a sharp kid. He stayed with me for a year. And just a great kid, but he wanted to learn, hands-on. How do you drive a nail? How do you dig a hole? How do you build something?
Right.
And so if you have a kid like that, and not just the guys, there are a whole lot of
ladies, right?
Ladies who are, and not just kids. I get a lot of letters from ladies who are, they're in their 50s or 60s. And they don't know how to drive a nail, but they're willing to learn. They want to learn.
Right.
And one of the best carpenters I ever had come out there was a young woman. Her dad was a handyman, and he didn't have any sons. So she became the son that he never had. And that girl could build things. She was terrific. Yeah. So I tell anybody, if you don't know how to do anything, a willing heart will show you how.
Right, apprenticeship, mentoring. Yeah. Young guy, maybe a young high school kid is at his summer off. He's junior year to senior year, or senior year to first year of college. Coming out with Jack for the summer. Yeah. Learn a trade. Learn something that you didn't even know existed. And if you have an interest in mission work or how to survive as a missionary in a very remote culture or society, the learning and education and the fellowship of a godly man who's walked this out for 50 plus years. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it has been 50 plus years.
I know, I feel it in my back. But what a blessing to have this kind of resource.
And we also have a really great time.
Yeah.
Everybody who comes there, they don't stay unless they want to.
And the other side you don't mention is you're also a very, very skilled musician.
I do that.
Was it a guitar? And you play several instruments, right?
Well, I play enough to scare myself. I actually laid down my instruments for 27 years.
Oh my.
because my wife and I, when we were first married, we went out on tour for 2 years, and I had been playing for over 30 years at that time.
Right.
And I said, man, I think I'm just going to lay this down, because I wanted to do this homesteading thing.
Right.
And the music, always kind of took all my time. So I said, I'm just going to lay it down. And I didn't pick it up until after my wife passed away. Wow. And now it is just such a wonderful thing to have, because when I'm playing, I can't think about anything else.
Right.
I have a lot of responsibility in this ministry and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to just play and have a good time. And we use the music to share Jesus with people.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Whether it's witnessing or worship time.
We play like coffee shops and stuff
fun.
like that.
Yeah.
Jake played with us.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah, I think I came to that.
And so, we just use that as a place just to share Jesus with people and have fun.
Right. Yeah.
Fun is a good thing.
We need to have fun. That's the point. All work and no play. It's not God's will for our lives. Obviously. So, well, thanks, Jack. I deeply appreciate that. My wife and I are going to schedule a time to come out and see you, and we'll drag Jake and Monica out, and so that's going to be really exciting to see.
It's always good to be here with you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks, and keep up the good work.
All right. Yeah, the Lord's moving on some neat stuff. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys for joining us. Contact Jack. Look him up on abundaculture.org. Look him up on YouTube. Jack Dody, D-O-D-Y is your last name.
Right.
I think you can be found that way on YouTube as well.
Abundaculture.
Abundaculture is the most effective way. And so check it out. Don't stand by. Don't let this rare opportunity pass without going into the abundant resource that Jack is on so many levels, spiritually and economically, and all the things the Lord's put in him. So thank you so much, Jack. We'll keep doing this. I'd like to maybe meet with you again in a month or so. So
keep your eyes on the sky, folks.
There you go. That's right. And as I always like to say, there is a God in heaven. He has a name. Do you know his name? He knows yours, and he's called you by name to be his very own. So Lord bless you guys. Have a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch. Ta-da.